Someone Like You by Sparkypasker. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 5. Bakugou ignored Izuku after the confrontation. The rest of the students seemed to follow his lead, if a little confused as to why. After all, no one else was there to see Izuku give him the only verbal beatdown of his life. Minus whenever Aunt Mitsuki would yell at him, but Bakugo always gave as much as he took when talking with his mother, so Izuku didn't really count those instances. Izuku was fine with this. He was actually able to have a peaceful school day for once. The teachers were even ignoring him. He didn't think he had ever been so happy at school. He could literally do whatever he wanted, and no one bothered him in the least. That afternoon, Izuku headed to a gym he had found online. It was owned by a man with a weak healing quirk. The gym's website bragged about how he was able to heal the tears in the muscles of those who purchased a membership. Good thing the owner had a license for quirk usage, otherwise, he would simply be giving the police all the information they needed to arrest him for public quirk usage. Otherwise, that was actually a good marketing campaign. By healing the tears in the muscles, they get stronger faster. So members get the results they want in a faster time period. And the holy grail of why this is the best gym, they don't require quirks to be disclosed. Izuku didn't think he would ever be so lucky to find this. Not only that, but the first 2 weeks were free as a trial period. Even with the owner's quirk, it is unlikely that anyone would get the results they were looking for in that small period of time, so they weren't losing out on anything either. It was so perfect. It was like fate was actually smiling down on him. That never happened. He certainly wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Izuku wondered where that saying came from. What was a gift horse anyway? Izuku's random thoughts halted as he walked through the doors of the gym. It was small, but had everything Izuku would ever want. A couple machines for the arms, a couple for the legs, a couple for the abs, and a few treadmills. A few years ago, Izuku had taken it upon himself to learn about computer science. He had finished his self-learning and was bored. This, of course, had led him to using the next few weeks to learn how to hack. When he was checking out the website of the gym, he decided to take a look at how busy a place they were. Turns out, not that busy. Their traffic on the website was high because of the perks, but it seemed like the people never stayed for very long and never came back. Izuku figured this was probably because, unlike many of the larger gyms, this one did not have a room where you could hone your quirk. That's what everything was this day. Nowadays, no one ever bothered to train their bodies. Why would they, when they could simply make their superpowers stronger instead? If it's strong enough, then that would cover any and all weaknesses, right? Wrong. But try telling the general public that. They certainly won't listen. Izuku should know. He tried telling his classmates that once in elementary school physical education. All the kids wanted to do was play around with the quirks, and the teacher at the time was more than willing to allow that, despite what the law said. Who cares? They're just kids, right? Why should they have to worry about laws at their age? We should encourage them to see how far they can go in an uncontrolled environment. Who cares if they ended up hurting each other? The other kids can take it. Well, except maybe not the quirkless kid. But who cares? Let's just say that the response to saying the body is more important to the quirk was akin to blasphemy, and he was locked in a closet for the remainder of the school day. He wasn't released by choice either. Supposedly they had forgotten he was even in there and only let him out when they opened the door to put something away at the end of the day. When the janitor opened the door, he looked at Izuku as if he was a rat caught in a trap that wasn't dead yet. Oddly enough, being in those closets was the best part of his elementary school experience, minus him being sure that one day they were going to kill him like the rat he was. The closets were dark and quiet. The small space actually felt much safer than the openness of the classroom. He remembers those times fondly whenever he has to pick a lock on a door. That's where he learned to do it, after all. He would even sometimes pick open the locks of the closets and hide away from bullies chasing him. With all his practice, now all he needs is a flick of a wrist to open nearly any lock. Izuku stepped up to the counter and rang the bell. He heard a call from somewhere in the building saying they would be right up. Izuku only waited a few minutes before someone came to the front. Wavy blue hair, bright green eyes, and shining smile matched the picture on the website for the owner, Kimura Iyashi. "Hello," he greeted brightly. "How can I help you?" "I would like to sign up for membership," Izuku replied. "No problem. Let me just grab a form," Kimura said, bending down and pulling open the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet. "Just fill this out and I will give you a tour." Izuku picked up a pen that was lying on the counter and began to read and fill out the form. It was a standard name, birthday, address. Then underneath that was the normal, make sure you pay the monthly fee or face possible expulsion from the establishment. Izuku signed his name at the bottom of the paper. Once he set down the pen, Kimura picked up his form, took a quick look to make sure everything was filled out, then put the paper back in the filing cabinet. He came around to the front of the desk and stood next to Izuku. "Welcome," he exclaims, "to Wayward Gym." Kimura threw his arms open wide, showing off the main room. "All the equipment you see is in this room. Each corner works a different part of the body. It starts with arms over here, then goes legs, abs, and cardio in that order, going clockwise." He points out each area as he introduces them. "In the back is the locker room. It is co-ed, but does have lockable stalls with toilets and showers for members to use if they don't feel like changing in front of others. We expect all of our members to be respectful. If there is harassment reported at any time, the offending party will be expelled. That being said, there are lockers in there as well. I will assign you a locker and get you the combination before you leave." He then turns around, pointing at a couple doorways behind the desk. "That room is my office. If something breaks and I'm not out here, you can usually find me back there. That other room is storage. It has clean towels and cleaning solution. Feel free to help yourself to anything you need. Any questions so far?" No, not right now," Izuku said with a shake of his head. "Great. So what kind of workout are you looking for?" Kimura asked, looking Izuku over. "Oh, I'm hoping to gain a little muscle. I want to get stronger physically, but I don't want to be a bodybuilder or anything like that. So I want to stay flexible. I also want to increase my stamina and endurance." "Got it. Sounds like a plan. What are you already doing?" "Well, I don't have any equipment at home, so mostly just sit-ups, push-ups, and low-impact exercises. I have also recently started doing yoga." "Yoga is a good way to stay flexible, so I would recommend doing that at the end of every workout. I can use my quirk to heal any rips in the muscles and would recommend being treated after completing your yoga." With Kimura talking about his quirk, Izuku was just waiting for him to ask about his. The website says they don't ask about them, but that's for business purposes. It's extremely common to ask about quirks when meeting someone new. It's damn near the same thing as asking your name nowadays. Izuku's original plan was to just simply imply he had a weak quirk until someone asked him directly. But he is starting to believe that wasn't a great idea. He never was a great liar. If someone asked him his quirk, he would probably just come out and say he was quirkless. But then he wouldn't have a gym he would be able to use. He would be kicked out. Izuku kept his mind from going into full-on panic, just waiting for the inevitable, but by wondering if there were any classes offered about how to be a better liar, and if there weren't, what kind of resources he could look for that would teach him. Well, let's show you how to use the machines, Kimura said, leading Izuku around the room. He showed him how to use each machine, and with each subsequent lesson, Izuku became less and less convinced Kimura was going to ask him anything about his quirk. It was actually causing a small bit of confusion. Okay, now that I showed you how to use each one, I'm going to have you complete your first routine with my supervision. How does that sound? Sounds good, Izuku said nervously. He sat down at a rowing machine. Kimura set it to low-level resistance, and Izuku started rowing. After a quick adjustment from Kimura on how to hold himself to prevent injury, Izuku was rowing as if he had done it his entire life. When he left that machine and started for the weights, his arms and legs felt like jello. He giggled to himself just a bit at the way he was walking. Kimura followed with a knowing smile. Izuku ran on the treadmill, winding down from his workout. For 10 months, he had been coming to this gym, and he could already see the effects. He was stronger and had more stamina than before. He had taken to running before school, after school, and whenever he could, really. He loved running. He had never found another way to get into that clear head space he had discovered that one time while meditating. Or at least he hadn't until he had started running. He wasn't built like a runner per se because he was more muscular than that, but he was lean and he had muscles. He could actually see the outlines of his abs. He felt accomplished. He had actually achieved something he had set his mind to. It made becoming a crime fighter feel so much closer. Now, that's not to say he was surprised by his results, because he wasn't. It was merely science. You work out, you break your muscles, they heal up stronger than before. Kimura's quirk just made that process faster, is all. No, a change that surprised Izuku in the last 10 months was the fact that Inko had made him a bank account. She always claimed there wasn't any need before. After all, Izuku never made any money and was never allowed to spend any money, so there was no need for him to have one. Izuku always assumed he was going to have to find a way to cash his paychecks and then just put the cash somewhere. But with this, he can gain interest on his account. Not a lot, mind you. Banks are in the business of making money, not losing it. So they aren't going to give their customers a lot of interest. But they give a little. Even a small amount of interest can amount to a lot of money the more you save. So his check was now directly deposited into the bank each week. Kimura came up to Izuku as he was pondering everything that had happened since he started coming to the gym. "Hey there, Midoriya. How are you doing today?" he asked. "I'm doing good. Just finishing up my workout for the day," Izuku replied. "You know, I was wondering if maybe you would like to be featured on the website," Kimura asked. "What for?" Izuku asked. "You have just made amazing progress since you started here. I know that we are just a small gym, but I'm hoping to add a feature to the site to show before and after images of our members, hoping to drum up some more business." Izuku looked reluctant. "Well, I guess I would be okay with that." He wasn't sure if he was actually okay with that. Who knows who could see that website? What if someone who knows he's quirkless sees it and ends up destroying the gym? Kimura must have seen he wasn't completely into the idea. "Well, maybe we can come back to that later. After all, you still have a baby face. Who would believe it's not photoshopped?" Kimura said with a good-willed laugh. Izuku blushed. "Shut up. I don't have a baby face." Kimura laughs at the response. "You know," he says lightly, "I have known you for 10 months, and even though we don't ask about quirks here, I have been trying to figure yours out the entire time, and I have not been able to think of anything at all that it could be." It's gotta be an emitter, right? This was what Izuku had been dreading the entire time he had been there. There was absolutely no way he was going to be able to not tell him. He had been studying how to lie for the last 10 months and was still not very good at it. He literally had to change the way his body and mannerisms were programmed when he was in a situation in which he wanted to lie. But he did not have that much control of his body. Izuku looked around the room. The only other person in the building right now was a man with a shark quirk lifting weights on the other side of the room. He took one more second to think about his actions. If he was kicked out, at least he would have already gotten what he wanted. I'm quirkless? Kimura looked at Izuku in surprise. During his research into lying, Izuku had learned a lot about body language, and the signals he was getting from Kimura's were non-threatening. His muscles were loose, his head was up, and his shoulders were back. Kimura smiled wide. It reached all the way to his eyes. Wow! Kimura exclaimed. I guess then your results really are impressive. There's been a lot of progress made for someone like you. Keep it up! That was both not an expected response and also exactly what he expected. Thanks, he said while giving a strained smile. Kimura, still smiling wide, gave Izuku a pat on the shoulder, then left to go check up on the weightlifter. Izuku slowed down his run and shuts off the machine. He cleaned it mechanically. He had gotten so used to cleaning the machines over the months that it had become second nature by now. He walked to the locker room, took a shower, and got dressed. It was time for school. He took the train. Chapter 6. Katsuki Bakugou walked home one day, months after his confrontation with Deku. He wasn't paying attention to his surroundings like he normally would. A hero must have a good sense of his surroundings, after all. But that wasn't happening today. The words Deku yelled at him had been bouncing around his mind, and it was starting to interfere with his routine. A feeling inside his gut was telling him that he needed to listen to what the freak was saying. But why? It's not like what he said was true or anything, or that he was scared of what he said being true. Of course not. Not Katsuki Bakugou. He wasn't scared of anything. He wasn't even scared when he was caught up by a villain made out of sludge and had to fight his way free. Thank goodness that was the villain that caught him, though. It made his job a lot easier, with even large amounts of water being vulnerable to blasts of heat and the impurities being flammable. It may have taken a little bit, and having received no help from the heroes on the scene, but he got out on his own. And if he can beat a villain even licensed heroes couldn't defeat, then of course he was destined for greatness, to be number one, to outshine even All Might. So, no, he wasn't scared of what Deku had said. No siree, not at all. But he was unnerved. Deku had been changing recently. It's not unusual for him to fidget during class, but those movements have become more defined and repetitive. Like he was actually trying to gain something from it. But it's not like Katsuki pays attention to him or anything, so he wouldn't actually know what the freak was doing. And the other extras never noticed anything. Their awareness of their surroundings was abysmal. So, yes, something had changed, and he didn't know what to think about it. He also noticed in the changing room that Deku had gained some muscle and was more flexible during physical activities. He could actually keep up with some of the extras now instead of falling behind. But everyone was pretending he wasn't there, just as they had been since Deku changed his survey saying he was no longer going to try out for a UA. And didn't that just annoy Katsuki to no end? For years, Deku had been going on and on about how he was going to be a hero, always following Katsuki around like a lost and unwanted dog. And then, all of a sudden, he changes. Says he's not going to be a hero. But Katsuki saw the changes. Why would Deku suddenly start working out and gaining muscle if he wasn't going to be a hero? Flipping burgers doesn't require the kind of muscle Deku was putting on. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Why was no one else seeing what he was seeing? He knew the reason why. It was because they didn't want to have to reflect on what that meant for themselves. But Katsuki wasn't afraid. He knew exactly what it meant. It meant Deku was going to try to trick him. He said he wasn't going to be a hero, but he was going to show up at the entrance exam just to embarrass Katsuki, just to show him just how much better he is than Katsuki. But that was not going to happen. Katsuki would show him when Deku shows up at the exam, Katsuki will kill him. That feeling in his gut came back, making him feel slightly nauseated. Maybe he ate something that went down bad. No, that can't be it. Katsuki makes his own meals, simply for that reason. He always uses the freshest ingredients and prepares them in a way to extract the most nutrients from them. There is no way he was feeling sick from eating something bad. Then maybe this feeling did have something to do with what Deku said? No, not possible. Deku doesn't know what he's talking about. Heroes kill villains all the time, and they're never called murderers or anything like that. Katsuki arrived at his home, absentmindedly going through the motions of his after-school routine. He took off his shoes at the door, climbed the stairs to the second floor of his home, and entered his bedroom. There, he completed his homework and did a few reps of hand and wrist strengthening exercises. His quirk puts a lot of pressure on his wrists, so he needs to make sure the muscles stay strong enough to take the pressure. After that, he took a shower and went back downstairs. He looked at the clock. It wasn't quite time to start cooking dinner yet. His parents had a meeting tonight, so they would be home a little late. He could afford to watch a bit of TV before he started cooking. Katsuki sat on the couch in front of his family's flat screen. He turned it on and began flipping through the channels. He stopped on a channel that was playing an old All Might cartoon he hadn't seen in years. He remembered that when he was a kid, watching this cartoon was a guilty pleasure of his. He never allowed anyone to find out he watched cartoons. That was something kids did, and he wasn't a kid. He was going to be the next number one hero. He didn't have time to waste constantly watching TV like many of his classmates. He bet that was what Deku did. Katsuki was surprised Deku was able to stay as skinny as he did with that type of habit. His other classmates were a little softer looking, while Deku had nearly looked like a stick. As the cartoon played, Katsuki became more relaxed. He smiled in victory as All Might defeated one bad guy after another. Then he began to battle that episode's mastermind. All Might was on one side of a road while the villain was on the other. They had just separated after coming to blows. It's around this time in the episode where the mastermind started to monologue, and All Might says something to teach the viewers something educational. But Katsuki never really listened to that part of the show. Once All Might defeated the villain, Katsuki would laugh and cheer at the hero's victory, missing the lesson altogether. It was the climax of the episode. All Might was about to unleash one of his long-range attacks. A civilian, eyes on the phone held in their hand, walked around the corner of a building and straight into the ongoing battle. Two sets of eyes turned to look at the unaware passerby. They lunged. The villain snagged the civilian first. The civilian screamed, startled. "Wahaha!" laughed the villain. "What now, All Might? You can't attack me when I have a hostage." The villain smirked in apparent victory. "Now choose. Either they die, or you die." Katsuki freezed at the villain's words. Deku's words echoed in his head. You would purposefully stalk and murder a civilian. Usually, whether he was watching these cartoons or not, he had no problem imagining himself in All Might's shoes. But right now, all he could see was his face on the villain's body. Katsuki lunged for the remote he had thrown across the sofa and shut off the TV. He didn't need to watch that. It wasn't hard to imagine how it ended anyway. Katsuki looked at the clock and figured it was time to start cooking. He was sure his parents would come home soon. And if they weren't, well, they should have been home sooner if they wanted a warm meal. Katsuki had finished tossing some vegetables and light sauces in a wok when his parents walked through the front door. They removed their shoes and met him in the dining room, where he was portioning out the food onto their plates. "Thanks, brat," his mom, Mitsuki, said, while sitting down and starting to eat. His father, Masaru, echoed Mitsuki's sentiments. Katsuki said nothing in response. He sat down and began eating. Mitsuki and Masaru looked at each other. Katsuki was acting weird. He always had some sort of comeback when Mitsuki called him a brat, usually by calling her a hag. It was their thing. As they were about to finish their meal, Mitsuki finally spoke up. "What's with the attitude, brat?" "What frickin' attitude, hag?" Katsuki yelled. "Hey, don't yell at your mother. She's just concerned. You're not acting like yourself," Masaru replied. Katsuki growled at his parents, finished eating, put his dishes in the sink, then left for his room. He cooked. They could frickin' clean. As he ascended the stairs, he heard his mother sigh, "What's his problem?" "He's a teenager, Mitsuki. We just have to give him some space. He will come to us when he's ready.